搞早哦，搞早，因为今仔日有多发水了，所以啊，小啊引起一些安尼不必要的骚动啊。咱今仔日吼，我做欢喜，我介绍我这个朋友吼 ，I speak in Taiwanese， 伊的名就是张明吼，伊讲伊讲2000年伊就住在那个套上面的了。哦，所以足早期的住伫遮迄个，人阮有 resident 我拢叫伊姐啦吼，因为我捌你迄阵是伊拢伫捌你的，阮有共同的迄个 topic 是拢做爱讲政治的，我讲台湾政治，伊讲韩国的政治我听咧，所以为什么造成今仔日我邀请来讲的吼，这有足大的原因你知影？那个我叫刘教授吼，伊是北韩的人吼，还是汉奸迄阵走来南韩，因为小花走来南韩，所以伊拿台湾来讲，伊算外省的对啦，吼，但是他们台湾外省佫无啥共，因为伊家己有一个细细foundation叫做 One Korean， 就是讲伊感觉讲台湾中国把迄个韩国爱迄个和平统一啦，吼。在迄个南韩来take over北韩安尼对啦，所以伊是一个做有理想的人安尼。你知影伊汉城大学是第一名毕业，伊读迄个铁学系，所以算讲，会使讲咱算讲外省内底做聪明的，就做读册。虽然面所就摕一个博士了，伊伫某地方教册安尼，教几世人吼，教大家客友安尼。我有一个。我无爱阁介绍，因为我有一张足大张的，大概伊的经历伫教会我有分的吼，我希望恁大家有看着咧。今仔日我讲一个我的故事是安怎，我较要邀请伊来。我想即个背景就是迄个，因为台湾你知影从旧年开始今年的选举就迄个大罢免的一直强烈。我有一日咧讲话讲，伊咧讲，伊咧问我讲，迄个你敢知影？迄个韩国人的迄议员吼，拢有中国咧招待吼，讲来去中国招待。伊讲去晚上拢有2、3个查某来找伊，跟他睡觉安尼对。我讲台湾即个我叫性招待，大家嘛知。我问柯文哲，伊上知影叫性招待。我是咧讲，奇怪，中国人开始对韩国的政治较有兴趣啊。伊较开始咧。Open his floodgate， 就是讲伊开始讲迄故事，我讲台湾和南韩那像兄弟之邦安尼，安尼阿强诶足有兴趣诶吼，较来我想，安尼无请你来讲即个代志，伊使咧讲迄个你知影着迄个尹锡悦总统无去互 impeach， 伊敢可能马修洛敢6日尔，就去互变到外国去出来。伊今仔较要讲是安怎迄个代志，无法当讲都清楚啦，因为这项大罢免是共搁咧进行中间，迄个结果也毋知就对啦。但是说话来讲，迄个总统是去互罢免成功嘛，所以算讲阿强诶赢就对啦。说话说即个情形是安尼，和台湾是共啊，你知影选举简单，要罢免做难诶，你看。台湾迄大罢免，迄个经过嘛是真足感动人个对咯。你看为着要签遐票吼，无足简单诶，了足侪时间吼日晒雨淋，风吹雨打，就去遐创遮个吼。结果也毋知吼，一届、2届、3届搁食吼，也毋知无啥物足好诶消息啦。但是大概是这样。所以我今仔。利用这个背景，就是讲我请这个尤教授，搁另外我爱讲的，就是讲迄个，你知影迄个台湾甲南韩有足共的所在，就是讲，伊嘛是经过汉奸了后，就分做北边甲南边。咱是1949年，我安尼讲，毋是讲台湾就是，我毋是讲台湾问题安怎解决，我是讲，伊当时嘛是就是蒋介石拍输，走来台湾。就是讲中国像即摆，咱现在定咧讲有一个2 chain 啊，一个问题都走出来，所以这背景足共诶。第二就是讲， 这嘛是一个 civil war between the communist 甲 non-communist 的 struggle， 就是讲安尼遮侪党1950啊，将士安尼用要50党啊，也搁咧搁一个战争的情形，啊，搁一个啊，搁一个我要甲你食落，你要甲我食迄种的情，即个情形拢无改。第三个就是讲。因为美国的迄个介入嘛，所以你知影较有今仔日的南韩，我袂使咧讲，就是讲伊美国的迄个利益介入，所以较有今仔的迄个南韩。同样的，台湾嘛是安尼啊，因为美国的介入，所以台湾嘛会当讲也至少在即几档啊，会当生存，会当继续搁 prosper 呀。啊，会当搁做较足好。啊，搁第三点就是讲，你知影你若讲伫韩国we talk about South Korea, and then we talking about the Honda and the Samsung. Yeah. As long as we talk about Taiwan, we talk about the TSMC. Yeah. 所以就是讲，这两个国家伫经济上拢足有成功啊，做啊拢足好。Yeah. 啊，就是就是讲人啊足富裕的迄个即条件足悬的你也知影就转去台湾即嘛是，我想韩国佫做啊足好因佫也去南韩，我倒头2当前我走去数就有一个机会安尼尔我感觉迄数迄 city 也变甲足歹足歹 recognize 佫另外一个共同点就是讲，奇怪迄个中国的迄个共产党，还对南韩和台湾拢做兴趣的我意思是讲，习近平最喜欢台湾啦习近平也很喜欢南韩这个有一点足歹，毋知变怎解说的。佫另外这伊是北韩出身的嘛。所以，我头先讲过，伊有一个 foundation 叫做 One Korea， 就是讲伊家己设立的，伊就是讲就是讲，伊是迄个主张讲迄个韩国在终极要统一的对统一的条件就是讲应该就是南韩统一北韩安尼这是伊即个伊的理想安尼。佫 I think I got speak too much enough. Yeah, you get bored, okay?
I start now?
No, give me another 1 second. And 佫讲一个伊台湾的观念，就是讲伊若像I don't know how long time ago you was invited by Ma Ying-jeou to speak in Taipei. What
2002.
2002.
Yeah, Ma Ying-jeou was the mayor of Taipei.
Yeah, and
Ma Ying-jeou was the mayor.
Right, and your topic is what?
It was a development projects. This works too. Yeah. It was 2002. I was invited to a convention where the third world countries are trying to become modernized, and what were the issues and how to tackle. Those were the topics. And Ma Ying-jeou, mayor of Taipei, came to greet the conventioners and talk to us. What I remember was Ma Ying-jeou was a Harvard, Oxford educated elite of some kind, whom I thought I liked, but later I found out that he was very pro-China. Is he?
Yeah.
So
yeah,
I'm about to change my opinion about him. May I start talking or what?
Yeah, as all your time.
Yeah. I have a question for you first. You really interested in hearing about what happened in last December in South Korea surrounding martial law declaration? Yes. You do, huh? That's amazing. Yesterday I had a few Korean friends for dinner, and I told them that I've been invited to this occasion. He said, "You're going to go to Taiwanese folks to talk about martial law? They are experts at martial law. They invented martial law. So if we have to talk, be short about it." So I'll try to be as short as I can. When we when I learned that I'll be speaking mostly to Christians, I prayed. And when I thought more about my subject matter, South Korean politics, I prayed much harder. Situation is much more green. Okay, my talk today will be under the subjects of these 4 broad titles. What happened? How did it unfold? 2, why did President Yoon Suk-yeol declare martial law at that time? 3rd, did it succeed or fail? 4, what now? How about the future? And most of you have handouts? Okay, so, my job was involved mostly talking, teaching in colleges for 40 plus years. But it's mostly to students. And it's been the first time I speak to people like you who look like me, and and we are Orientals, Asians, Far Eastern Asians, much in common in culture and tradition. But opportunities like this is very rare. And I thank Mr. Eng Lim for inviting me to have this occasion. As I said, I'll try to be as brief as possible, but the subject is very complicated. Some of them, to fully understand, we have to go back to early 20th century or late 19th century to explain something in full. But I'm not going to do that because this is not an academic research. So I will talk for about 30 minutes or so, and we'll spend as much time as possible listening to you and your questions and so on. I think that'll be more proper. I think Taiwan and Korea has much in common. We are very close to mainland China, like Ukraine is to Russia. And America, if it wants to win over in US-China rivalry, we come out as the first topic to handle, both Taiwan and Korea. We share something in common with Vietnam as well. Some time ago, I went to Westminster. There are a lot of Vietnamese folks living there. And one person I met wrote a book called From Saigon to San Diego. The book entailed all the troubles he went through to come to America, to San Diego. The boat people and how their life was so miserable. And I cried as I was reading them. And to Vietnamese people today, Vietnamese Americans who live in LA and elsewhere in America, Vietnam is not their mother country. It's not the country they came from. It's not the country they love. They have any sense of affinity and loyalty. It's a communist. I think if Taiwan and South Korea ever come to share the similar fate like South Vietnam was, we may end up living in America having no mother country to return to. So we share much in common. Okay, now let's go to what happened. In December 3rd last year, when most people start their Christmas celebration, in our time, 10:30 at night in Korea time, in late time, it was 6:30 in the morning, in the evening of the December 4th. Early in the morning, I got a call from my friend who lived in East Coast. He thought I was expert in Korea, and he just heard something happened in Korea, so he called me and asked, assuming that I would already know, what the hell happened in Korea? So I said, I haven't heard of it. Once I find out a little more, I'll give you a call. So I turned on the television and went to some YouTube stuff and found the martial law was declared. It was a very unusual kind of martial law. Usually what martial law means, soldiers come out to the street, put a curfew, so you cannot go to wherever you want to. And there's a curfew of time and curfew of places. And if you violate that, you can go to jail without a trial. That's martial law, right? Usually martial law soldiers occupy media, print media, newspapers, radio stations, TV stations, so that people will hear only the voice of command, the martial law command. That's another regular story of that. And usually martial law has some people they want to get rid of. A few people are arrested, and summarily tried and executed and so on. Those are the martial law stuff. Nothing like that happened in Korea. It was very exceptional kind, very unusual kind of martial law. And when I called my friend and said, a lot of people are surprised that there was a martial law, but to me, it was not a surprise. It was a martial law waiting to happen for a long time. During President Yoon served 2.5 years at the point of his martial law. He started his tenure March 9th, 2022. I went to his inauguration ceremony in Korea. And in this 2.5 year period, the opposition party, which controls 192 seats out of 300 seats in Congress, they call Korea's National Assembly. They can do anything. They pass laws. Only thing they cannot do without some votes from other party, impeachment of a president or something as similar, as serious as that, or change of constitutions. And they had that nearly total control of Congress. And from the very beginning of the tenure of President Yoon in 2022, for 2.5 period, there were 178 demonstrations to ask to pull President down. Resign. You have no right to be in the presidential palace. And all kinds of, his wife had a gift of some very expensive, name brand handbag, supposed to cost a few tens of thousands of dollars. And they wanted to impeach the president for that. Congress had, during that time, I think some of this is happening in Taiwan as well. Taiwan is lucky though. You have a righteous, independence-minded government in power, but Congress is largely controlled by the pro-China group. Am I right?
Yes.
Similar situation holds in Korea, except the opposition hold in Congress is more magnified in Korea than in Taiwan. And also, something that's different between Taiwan and Korea, I learned that from Mr. Lin, that you don't worry too much about elections. Elections are supposed to be pretty fair and square. That's why president is being elected. There's no real gross kind of violation. In Korea, from 2014, there were early voting was instituted. People would vote anytime about a week from the week before the election day. And this early voting and on the day voting, more traditional voting, the early voting size has been increasing all the time, occupying something like 30 to 40% of the entire votes. And when the votes are, there are some 270 congressional districts in South Korea. Each place people go and vote. But early election, early voting, you can do it anytime. You don't have to send it to any particular place. You can live in Seoul. You can vote for your congressman living in Jeju Island. Early voting. You can vote anywhere for anything, and that's the source of, Joseph Stalin is supposed to have said, democracy, election is very important to democracy. But what they don't realize is voting is not what's really important. Counting the vote is what's really important. All kinds of misgivings about that. And also, for some 270 congressional districts, ratio was given between how people voted on the day, more traditional voting, and the early voting. Early voting, some 270 districts had more or less uniform 26.3% of them were one side or the other. There's one of the fundamental principles of mathematics is the law of large numbers. You cannot throw 100 coins and 100 coins land on the head or the tail. Things like that never happen. law of large numbers that if you increase the number to a sizable, statistically significant number, then it will fall half and half, roughly. If you try 100 times, 1,000 times, the result will always be very close to half of them will be head, half of them will be C. So that's the law of large numbers. The election results defy completely. The other thing is this early voting votes. Korean, I don't know how Taiwanese vote. In America, you vote from president, governor, senators in one piece of paper, right? In Korea, you can vote presidential election, congressional election, governor's election of a province that can all take place in one day, but not in one seat, but 3 separate kind of cards. And each card is color coded, yellow, white, and so on. So that all the people who voted in presidential election goes to one, all the people who voted in congressional election categorized, and then whom they voted for. So you have stack of papers in congressional seats. Okay. This is a district A, and I have so many votes. You have all been to banks where cash is counted, right? You give $100 and I want $5, and the $25 bills are counted just like that, accurately, much more accurate than your hands can count. Okay. But the problem is the way between the vote from post office to the place where it's counted. All kinds of things can happen. People having found these votes were being carried on shopping bags, grocery bags, not in official boxes. And then there were pictures of people who were really stuffing the votes. At Ronald Reagan's time, there was a Speaker of the House, was a man named Tip O'Neill. Mm-hmm. Tip O'Neill famously said, all politics is local. In Korea, politics became very, very local. There are some districts that always vote for one way or the other, so that you get all the people who did early voting in one area. And then you know that your candidates will win that anyway. So excessive votes are transported through shopping bags and others and stuffed into other people, and they are counted like your dollar bills are counted. And this sort of blatant election irregularity and fraud was widely known to few people, and one of my friends have done this. Of 192 opposition party members, these 53 people have been elected occupying a seat in the House due to election fraud. Their names and pictures are posted in 12 different places in Seoul. Not one of them protested. Not one of them brought the people for a defamation suit because they don't want to be investigated. If they become investigated, I'm elected legitimately, nobody has a right to get rid of me, then, well, submit this, submit that, and all kinds of evidence will appear. So in spite of the fact that you are a congressman, but your seat there is illegitimate, even if people say that, they just stay quiet, because the more they respond, the more there will be a call for investigation, which they don't want. So it's an amazing thing. People say, he's a criminal, and the criminal is quiet. I'm not a criminal, he doesn't say. Because once he says it, there will be an investigation. It will really show that he's a criminal. He's a criminal is more afraid of that than being somehow saving his face. Okay, in the handout you see, in last, I think it's pages.
Can I stop you over here? Okay. Yeah, can I stop you over here?
Okay.
Yeah. 我想这个问题就是讲，我想伊咧讲的就是讲，因咱台湾无迄个early voting嘛，OK， 谢谢，有听到吗？我先讲我有理 ，This one is enough. Sorry, I guess you give me 2 minutes. Yeah. Oh, I try to explain.
Yeah, off.
Yeah. 就是讲，伊头咧讲的，就是讲，因台湾甲韩国上无大个共是，咱无early voting嘛，无啥物 mail voting， 啥物拢无，因为咱台湾着爱用手机去算啊，你会记来咧开票迄阵拢1票啊2票， 国民党一边啊，民进党一边啊，即摆佫有北党佫一边，所以要做票就是讲较难就对啦。韩国都倒变了，伊迄种early vote，伊讲什么 early vote 34%、3%。You say how many percent already finished the early voting? Like what, 30, 40%?
About 36%.
36%.
In April election 2024.
Yeah, 所以迄个当做手脚了。伊这就是讲，遐和台湾无共的所在。Okay, you continue. Yeah.
Okay. So, if you open up and on the lower right-hand side, I put numbers circled. Look at pages 6 and 7. It shows sort of the timeline of since the martial law declaration and how it has been followed.
这张就安尼。
On December 3rd, as I said, at 10:30 at night, President Yoon declared martial law. And all congressmen were present. There was no attempt to putting them out or disable them from conducting parliamentary functions as usual. I think President Yoon, although he was declaring martial law, which kind of suspends the constitution and law a little bit, wanted to be constitutional, legal in everything he did. Since then, he has not violated a single law, single item of constitution. On December 4th, speakers voted that the martial law was illegal and it should end. 3 hours later, President Yoon withdraws his martial law declaration. So people thought, what the hell is going on? So papers and newspapers all said, the broadcasters said, it was a failed martial law. It was a short-lived martial law. It was a short-lived martial law. It seemed like a failed martial law, but my view is very different, and it is in the last 2 pages of your handout, pages 8 and 9. And I thought this was President Yoon's action of a martial law declaration is something like cutting the Gordian knot. Last 2 pages explain what Gordian knot is. It's sort of a Western fable. Alexander the Great went to what became later Alexandria, named after him. There was a big, huge knot. And there was a mystical prophecy that whoever disentangled this knot will rule Asia, or something like that. And Alexander the Great, 2 interpretations. One, he took his sword out and cut it. The other is he was so well that he disentangled the impossible knot of. So President Yoon, what were the knots that he wanted to break? I'm kind of going back and forth, but for 2.5 years from his inauguration to his time of martial law, there were 23 indictments of his cabinet members and like officials. For example, the opposition doesn't like an attorney general who is prosecuting the party leader who has committed election fraud. Okay, let's say that's the case, and that is the case. This man violated, so attorney general is politically swayed. He should be impeached. 22 impeachments were happening in that 2.5 year period. And I don't know how it is in Taiwan or even in America. When, for example, Secretary of Treasury, Secretary of State become impeached, from the moment he's impeached, he cannot function as secretary anymore. It's not like it'll wait until he really did commit the impeachmentable crime. Instead, you are no longer capable of functioning as secretary of whatever you were leading up to that point. So when you have a cabinet of some 27 people, 22 people cannot be performing their duty. Is government possible? It was an effort to paralyze the government, just to want to make sure. So President Yoon said in his inauguration, in his declaration speech, 22 impeachment cases of my cabinet and cabinet level ministers. And then they cut the budget. I thought Mr. Lin told me it was happening in China too.
Right now.
You know, president, to run a presidential palace, he has to invite people for dinner and entertain them and do a lot of things. He needs some private money. The budget committee said put a zero on it. President cannot have a person inviting to his presidential palace and have a dinner because there's no money to pay for the dinner. That's how bad the situation has become. Budget cuts and repeated indictment made government impossible. That's why I am declaring martial law, and that's what's his justification. So, in a way, what happened and why did you declare martial law? But when martial law was first declared, people were surprised and shocked, and many people didn't like it. I suppose that a lot of Taiwanese folks do not like the idea of a martial law, right? Your experience was not that good. So people's initial reaction to the phenomenon of martial law was negative, critical. I don't like it. It's a surprise. Surprise I didn't want. Why did he declare martial law? And it's not like a real martial law either. It was withdrawn 6 hours later. Did he know? Did he go crazy? But that was the only way he could do it. Who could surface all these knots that were brewing, that were being accumulated daily, making things more and more impossible with each day going by. He had to declare the martial law. In my opinion, it's like cutting the Gordian knot. Very complex, long overdue problems are resolved by just one decisive action. That's what I think President Yoon did. But people continue to be reactive, continue to be negative to the idea, the fact that he declared the martial law. Very few people were paying attention to why he declared martial law. Martial law, in a way, was a failed attempt. Because as those chronology will show, on April 4th this year, he was impeached. The Constitutional Court impeached him. So what Congress did in December was ratified in April. So when he was impeached, I wrote to my friends text, I'm too old to cry. The matter is too serious to laugh. To think about what is to be done, it's so discouraging. To give up, it's too painful to do either. So it was just terrible action on the part of Constitutional Court. Constitutional Court consists of 8 people. The vote was unanimous. Only till a few days before, Constitutional Courts, there were opposition people nominate them, government party nominate them, president nominate them, and so on, making 8 people. There were 2 people who pretty much swore that there will be a man of justice and will provide total fairness, voted in unanimity, 8-0 impeachment, April 4th. So he declared martial law, he withdrew it, and 5 months later, even the court sanctified it. So he's impeached, so martial law is a failure. But in the meantime, what martial law did was for most people in Korea who did not know how these problems were accumulating, how the opposition party made it almost impossible to govern, impossible to even maintain the order on the streets, because opposition demonstrators were daily occupying the city of Seoul. People did not know. So what Yoon did was, I don't know about Taiwan. I was born in 1941. I suppose most of you are here, give or take 10 years. I think you're all of the same generation. So we share much in common in terms of how we went through history together. This generation is aware of where we were. And young people who are more radicalized, more leftist, old people say, you know how poor we were in 1950 during the Korean War? Did you know that we had nothing to eat but barks of a tree? We live like a human being now. Why are you trying to destroy? That's the appeal of our generation to the young people. But the young people don't see it that way. Young people see ahead and see how difficult it is to get a job, how difficult it is to find an apartment. So birth rates in South Korea is world's lowest. 1.6 people are born out of 2 couples every year. It's the world's lowest rate of repopulation. In Taiwan, so a lot of generation gap. Young people are very much inclined to leftist rhetoric. You know, they want a country where everybody's peaceful and harmony. We all work very hard, but whatever results from our hard work, we share with all the people who need it. You know, it's like Christ-like words. Communists do that. They have this beautiful, very ideal picture of ideal heaven-like picture. That's communist utopia. And the rightists, the people who defend freedom, do not have such ideals to show without lying about it. Because one of my beliefs, it's sort of separate from this, is I believe the country we want to live in is not a utopia. Because all the people who tries to create utopia on earth only is succeeded in establishing hell on earth. North Korea is the largest open-air prison the world has ever seen. The suffering of North Korean people is unparalleled. We talk about Jewish plight during Auschwitz and other places, but that was only at maximum 5-6 year period. North Korean people have been going through this year on 80 long years. And the control is not periodic. It's people might think you suffered under the martial law of Chiang Kai-shek and others, but nothing to compare. It's in scale, in scope, in depth, in thoroughness, in constancy. There's no parallel. So young people have been kind of disenfranchised, put aside, and very leftist. But President Yoon's declaration of martial law brought them up. We Koreans call it 20s, 30s generation. For people who just graduated from college, including our college campuses and beyond. People who are newly on job market, people who are about to get married and have families. These are the generation who was rising up on March 1st this year. You know, March 1st was a very important holiday to Koreans during the Japanese War, the nationwide uprising against Japanese colonialism. On March 1st, celebrating that plus the pro-Yoon government, nationwide, they estimated 6.5 million people demonstrated against the impeachment of President Yoon. In spite of it all, the Constitutional Court ruled to impeach him. So up to only a day before, I was confident. It was not like the impeachment days of 4 years ago for President Park Geun-hye. This situation has changed. 6.5 million people hit the streets to protest. This cannot happen again, and it happened. So I don't know. So that's the roughly. Why did you declare? What time is it? If you allow me to talk like this, I'll go forever. So I should stop somewhere.
Okay, you can stop now.
I just want to give a few points directly or indirectly related. I think we are all essentially, most fundamentally talking about the importance of freedom, liberty. You know, Christ was tempted by the Satan to turn to magic, mystery, and authority. First, do some magic, turn this stone into bread. I don't want to persuade people through magic. Mystery. You fall from high places, the angels will come defend you. Jesus replied, don't try to, tamper with God's wishes. Third, authority. You're powerful. There are people under it. Whether they like it or not, you make them move because you have the authority. People follow magic. People follow mystery. People follow authority. Jesus rejected that. Jesus wanted people to come really knowing him on free will. Come to me, on your free will. Don't come to me because I perform miracles. Don't come to me because I'm mysterious or I have a lot of authority, like King of Kings. Just understand the truth of what I say, and if you are convinced, follow me. If you are not convinced, try me, and so on. That's what I think is Jesus' call. And I think all human beings are born free. We are different from animals. All animals live through their life according to their born instinct, their genetics. Human beings have been born to select whom to marry, what kind of job to get, where to live. If we don't select, we don't have the instincts animals do. We have to think, we have to select. We are born like that. We're born to select, make choices. To make choices, to select, we need freedom. To ask people to live unfree, it's like to ask us to live like animals. We cannot allow that to Taiwanese or Koreans or any place. That's one thing. The other is in this bigger picture from reorganization of the world order. The world order, United States led after World War II, is kind of coming to reassessment. It's about, some people call Trump a transformational president. His changes he will bring in is not just going to affect his remaining 3+ years or short term. It might be very long lasting. So we, in Taiwan and in South Korea, we both face the same challenge. And communists have many things that we lack. They have the slogans or the idealistic picture to which young people are always attracted. And one of Lenin's first principles is all power to the Soviet, and anybody who rejected, no means are out of the table. For the purpose you pursue, any means necessary is allowed, is permitted, it's legitimate. The first group that is to go to action once communists come into power is Communist Party's Department of Propaganda and Agitation. Their job is to lie, to threat, to disinform the people, not just their behavior, but their minds and thoughts too. And we can be subjected to that. And we, in that sort of united spirit, I will end my talk. So if I'm short of covering something, please raise and I'll try to answer them.
Okay. Sit down. Take it. Okay. Get some water, yeah. Okay. 我无翻译我要紧吼，咱大家拢听有啦，我是无爱去了时间给恁做低调。你知影，咱人生问题较晓问啊，我当然我会甲问做一个问题，我今仔日听了我去做一个问题去走出来。我想迄个就是讲头一咱咧讲early voting 咯，台湾叫做不在籍投票嘛。因为已经伫你知影即马国民党所控制迄个立法院员，即条就有咧讲足济，我毋知影还袂过，我毋知影是安怎还袂过，就是讲意思是讲在中国会当投票，你迄个 mail order 会当投票，逐项会当投票安尼就比较容易做手脚嘛。所以是安怎讲台湾即几单开始拢袂过，因为就是你知影，就是迄个蔡英文的政权甲动作济就对了。你看我伫迄个韩国是一个总统嘛，所以因这吼安怎来？我想佫一个足大问题，就是因可见就是做票的机会就极足大个，即马整个伊国家的一个情形，就是讲 伊若无反省，啊，搁就是说大部分拢是迄个反对党的迄个，所以足侪物拢无法度通进行，调查啦，创啥拢无法度，伊就甲伊冻掉。像今仔去台湾的迄个Congress相共，伊都创遐迄个过遐法律安尼乌白写，毋知咧写啥货类似这种行动就对。因是我想韩国是足早发生啊，这毋是讲最近的代志，因法律做古早就做甲一大堆有诶无。佮第二点就是讲，迄个韩国含中国有一个叫做 Free Trade Agreement， 迄差不多我记10年前啊10年前就因就签了所以伫迄个过程内底先怎开会发生这代志？咱嘛使甲问就是讲，迄阵时中国的迄个手印已经伫中国已经伫美国有发生，伫韩国已经发生什么影响？这也足大的一个迄个关键点咧。我即马差不多，那会使开放 ？Can I open for forum?
Yes.
To ask you. Yeah.
They can ask in Taiwanese.
Yeah. Okay. I will translate to you. If they speak in Chinese, in Taiwanese. 安尼无我就因为咱差不多11点嘛还是要 take a break 食一个水一下，再来。后下个时间我们就 open forum， 就是讲大家拢会使讲，大家看你要讲啥，大家说问题，我想伊就是咱该回答这个问题。好，咱 take a 10。
Dr. Liu and I will discuss about what is the influence of Chinese in South Korean society and politics. Maybe you can elaborate a little bit so we can understand better about the situation over there.
The general understanding is after the Deng Xiaoping reform beginning in 1979, in 1991 fall of former Soviet Union, both CCP of China and North Korea were very much alarmed. This is what happened to our mother communist country, Soviet Union. What's going to happen to us? They're scared. And there were Tiananmen Square uprising in 1989. And I don't know, what I learned later was it was not just in Tiananmen, it was in many major cities as well, including Xi'an, Chengdu, and so on. So, I don't know where to begin, but thanks largely to American efforts, China has succeeded. And I don't know whenever it started, it became magnified with Xi Jinping coming to power, 2011, I think, right? And United States, according to some observers, like my friend Gordon Chang, you may know him, says, we have been at war. Chinese have been fighting war. We have been just sitting down and just observing it, not knowing that they are being war. And Chinese strategy follows that of famous Sun Tzu, the art of war. The best outcome of a war, most victorious of victory of all, is fighting a war and winning it without bloodshed, without really fighting a war. It's now called hybrid war. You have to have a very strong military, but alongside there's a cultural war. There's a war that's happening in the minds of young people through educational institutions and foundations activities. And there is infiltration of entertainment, movies, and so on. And communists are excellent in one. They always come up with a very beautiful language. In old days, Korean, we called our close friends comrades. We don't call them comrades anymore because communists took the good words away from us. But anyway, they've been waging all front war. In South Korea, it has been estimated some 30% of Korea's lands are now Chinese CCP infiltrated, owned by Chinese people. And the rumor has it there's no congressman in both parties who have not had in their pocket some Chinese CCP money in their pocket.
30%.
Some of these monies have been spent very well. During the height of 1980s and 90s. You know, Kim Il-sung of North Korea had famously gave what he called Kim Il-sung Scholarship. There are aspiring young people who is too poor to really go to elite institutions to pass a law and become a lawyer and judges and so on. Kim Il-sung identified those older people with a lot of complaints who has brains added with scholarships. And these people have become judges, prosecutors, occupying all legal apparatus. And they control the mass media, newspapers, magazines, broadcasting stations. I don't know about my main understanding is Taiwanese strategy to become modernized, to become industrialized and economically prosperous. You had a small business concentrated approach. South Korea under Park Chung-hee, we had big corporate conglomerate approach to wealth. We achieved pretty much similar situation in the economy. Korea became 10,000 per capita country in 1996. And 11 years later, 27, it became $20,000 economy. 2017, less than 10 years later, it became 30,000 a year per capita country. It's about like that in Taiwan as well.
Yes.
A similar pace as well. So through that process, people are busy just building their own wealth and their livelihood. There has been infiltration by way of labor movement. There is in Korea, Minju Nochong, is a democratic labor union. It is not like labor union we know today in America or elsewhere. I used to work for railroad when I was going to graduate school to make my tuition in Minneapolis, working for Chicago and Northwestern Railroad. There's a railroad station, railroad union. There's automakers union. There's garment industrial union. There is all kinds of unions, right? In Korea, there's a single union. Every local union, minor unions have to listen to all powerful, very rich, they collect annual dues that amounts to multi-million dollars every month. They're very wealthy. Communists are supposed to be pretty poor, but in Korea today, the leftists has all the money to dispense with for whatever thing they want to do. Chinese money has particularly been so. So during the impeachment trials, there were massive demonstrations against the impeachment, which usually outnumbered the people in terms of size, like 4-1, 5-1. But there were groups that were demonstrating for impeachment. And people went to see them, and majority of the people demonstrating for impeachment were Chinese. Once they wore Korean policemen's uniform. They looked in every way like Koreans. But once microphone is given to them, they are very reluctant to talk, because once they open their mouth, it's clear where they come from. It's a large number of Chinese people, and they infiltrated universities, offices, political apparatus, and so on, in alliance with this Minju Nochong Democratic Labor Union, which has an iron grip on everything. The TV station has recently fired the board of directors. There's nothing they cannot do to an organization. The Department of, let's say, Department of Administration in government, and there's a labor union of the public employees as well. And they can do anything they want to. They can hire and fire the bosses. You heard about Samsung, you heard about Hyundai. Especially Samsung has been hounded. He spent a couple of years in jail, the CEO. And Samsung's stock prices have been steady or have been going down, in spite of their very famous name, brand name. I don't know if I answered you, but the Chinese hands are everywhere in South Korea, which I suspect will be everywhere in Taiwan. But somehow I think Taiwanese are countering it a little better than we are doing it. Through more fair, you don't have an early voting system. there's no election fraud. They have not really infiltrated the judiciary as much as, I don't know, do they control most of the media, press? I think similar attempts are being made everywhere, in Thailand, in the Philippines, especially Taiwan and Korea, South Korea, because we're so close to them. Having us on the enemy camp, along with the United States and Japan, will be a frightful prospect for CCP. So whenever I want to say anything against CCP, I want to make sure that it's not against China. It's the CCP we are opposed to. It's not Chinese takeover of Taiwan, it's a CCP takeover of China. And I've been to Mongolia a few times. Mongolia is, again, sort of a divided country. There's Outer Mongolia that became Republic of Mongolia now. And there's Inner Mongolia, one province of China, which has a lot more people than Outer Mongolia. But even in Inner Mongolia, the Mongols don't talk about unification because once united, Mongolia will disappear. You Chinese outnumber them. Mongolia is the only country, I don't know, it's the only country, unique country that has in constitution, no more than 3% of Mongolian population can be non-Mongolian. So they limit Chinese influx that way. That's one of the reasons why it can be more populated as it should be. It's not being done. You cannot have two contradictory purposes by one action.
Okay, Jay, you can take a break now.
Yes.
Yeah, just sit down. 我想，伊咧讲迄个韩国嘅代志吼，我来分享我一个经验，就是讲，我台南县嘅人哦，那个对 ，sorry。迄连做伙出声吼，我讲我嘅例子是讲，你知道哦 ？OK， 哦，我嘅例子是讲，中国咧渗透台湾哦，我想是比咱想的搁较恐怖吼。我嘅例子是安尼，因为我台南县嘅人，所以我差不多像我1月迄阵，我就走去马沙沟迄个7股迄搭遐吼，因为阮太太我朋友讲叫我去买迄个咩啊讲迄个乌鱼子啦，伫咧马沙沟做名，一个生带，伊专门咧做乌鱼子的。伊听讲是台湾第3大咧做乌鱼子的，我就去伊个工厂嘛，因为阮古早朋友拢捌伊啦，所以伊甲我介绍去看，伊做甲足好个。即摆你知影迄个马沙沟迄个像讲7股拢是迄个渔翁啊嘛。外口讲渔翁啊，对个。一个朋友讲，伊甲我讲，你敢知影？迄个我后生即摆咧，迄个管理即个拢总差不多，伊讲差不多6家的股，因为你台湾咧饲迄个，即摆台湾咧饲迄个叫做石斑嘛吼，无销去中国无甲卖美国，对毋对？一个就是讲一个迄个胖，差不多拢有，差不多就是讲一家差不多有3空啊4空就对了吼，拢爱人 management，伊拢总差不多，我想6家拢要到20几空就对了，所以逐空的话，我意思是讲，应该有人做过渔翁啊，无我介绍者就是讲，拢一定要有一个pump啦，创啥，有一个 warehouse 吼，像你若咧烤鱼就是讲爱甲 drain out， 互伊打去，鱼仔慢慢掠出来，对毋对？所以迄个代志足细就对。我就讲我即个真水啊，趁钱偌济。伊讲是嘞吼，即个 owner 是中国大陆来的。我讲甲伊住伫伊讲我拢住伫迄个厦门啊。我讲即敢是 CCP 来买，你敢知影？伊讲嘛毋知影，就拢我讲迄个厝头家捌来就对。伊讲无啊，捌看过啊，都拢无伫个，伊就通过安尼外汇无诶，就伊讲买差不多4档就对了，讲偌济钱，伊当时讲用头一个该买啦吼，当时一个，即摆讲头变3、4个，我想讲迄无重要。 迄个所在住伫迄个闸门溪的溪边，住即摆咱咧做台湾，伊做一个叫做跨海大桥，即摆都咧起。若阿强的兵仔要对遐入来吼，住连兜啊。我就感觉讲，即个遮好的所在，这毋是讲咧饲鱼啊好所在，是迄个strategic的迄个上好所在，叫中国甲你买去，佫无人知影咧。我就去遐交花，我就甲内政部交花，当然伊就感觉我这无啥，因为伊已经买足济啊，有一个人我讲已经买足济啊，所以吼，你就知影即个阿强咧做诶代志吼，你足太了解，但是伊渐渐仔甲你买，我知影，我是讲若以此推论啊，台湾海边遮个土地吼，毋知买偌济啊，佫咱农地嘛去互买偌济，咱拢毋知影。所以讲韩国有30%诶，迄个就是讲工业控制by中国诶势力，就是安尼啊。台湾有可能搁较济，有可能搁较少，咱毋知安尼尔。即个真正是真正抬落到咧，你较知影，小抬落到你较知影讲，哇，即地都伊诶啊，你有冇知？所以迄是足恐怖的，所以我了解伊咧讲遮个代志是相当恐怖的代志。好，这是我的故事吼。好，大家佫有问题继续讲，佫问吼。
How about Kyrgyzstan? You want to say something?
Yeah. You want to continue?
I mentioned here, there's a country called Kyrgyzstan. It's, I think it's north of Kazakhstan.
Yeah.
Mongolia stretches out, Kazakhstan starts, and there's about 25 miles space in between. I think that's Kyrgyzstan. Kyrgyzstan had an election in 2022 with hardware imported from mainland China. Conducted the election fraud was discovered, and president was impeached, and new president who fought against fraudulent election became president. He, ironically, was visiting President Yoon on the day he declared martial law. He declared martial law at 10:30. He was meeting this Kyrgyzstan president at 3 o'clock in the afternoon, about 6 hours before. They had one thing in common. They all were suffering from fraudulent election and looking for ways to found it. One key to it is, President Trump talked about election fraud in 2020 election, and fraud in the election process is a pretty strong issue to him. So there should be some global, not just Korea or Taiwan, international outcry against election fraud. And some evidence will surface about how elections were stolen in South Korea by vivid details, except that these election frauds are very, very difficult to prove. You have a picture of a person who is stuffing the vote box with their own manufactured votes. There's a picture of it. There's a date on that. There's a place marked on it. But then opposition says that's all fraud. It's all AI-produced project. So there's no way really fighting them. When you tell the truth, they pass around the disinformation. That we are become liars, and we have to defend that we are telling the truth. They always stand on the sort of right side of things in the minds of the media. That's Kyrgyzstan.
Yeah. 那中文翻做什么？几何级数哦，对。所以迄嘛中国学习出来。好，有啥物问题来继续问咧。因为台湾这大把面就是迄个过程嘛是安尼。
I see Korea as a good neighbor, Taiwan. We face the same challenge. And do you think when the time in need, Korea will helping hand to Taiwan? Thank you.
Good question.
You know, America, in a way, betrayed Taiwan. You know, after Nixon visited China in 1972. I think it was Jimmy Carter who dissociated himself, and China came to the seat in Security Council of the United Nations. And Taiwan was no longer a country. It closed the embassy in both Taipei and Washington, right? How did Taiwanese people feel about that? Is America really trustworthy ally, or, America is a big country. It makes its decisions in an odd way. Winston Churchill once said, you can always depend on America doing the right thing at the end, after he tries everything else. That's Americans. For Americans to come to any kind of decision, it takes too much time for our taste. We're in much more urgent situation, and Americans don't seem to realize it. So will Korea come in defense of Taiwan in case of war or something? I'd like to see that, but I don't think it'll happen for many reasons. I think he will say, when America really wants Korea to be part of defense of Taiwan, I think there's a strong chance for it. But it will pretty much follow the American lead.
Thank you.
There was definitely material support.
Professor Liu, thank you very much for your presentation on the Korean politics today. I just have one question. You know, the freedom is not free, and we all need to protect the democracy. Question for me is that, is there any other option other than declaring martial law for President Yoon? I don't know the situation, but is there any better option than that? Thank you.
Very good question.
Yeah, the act of declaring the martial law has been criticized by some people. No matter whatever is the purpose, just martial law is bad. That's not something you should do in a democracy. That's something that happens in the most backward, tribal societies, not in advanced industrial democratic Republic of Korea. That's how they want to think. But Korean politics is centuries behind the corporate world, academic world, international world. They still play old politics. Korean politics Korea before it became Japanese colony in 1910, Korea was the Yi dynasty, the last dynasty, like Qin of China. Yi dynasty, the last stage of Yi dynasty was very, very awful. In my own reading of Korean history, it goes something like this. In 1592, Japanese Toyotomi Hideyoshi invaded Korea. And they not only invaded once, they invaded twice 2 years later. The entire country was ransacked. There was no order. There was nothing to eat for 4 long years, from 1592 to about 1597 or 8. About 30 years later, in the 1930s, the regime was changing in China from Ming to Qing. South Korea was caught in between. Korea was punished by Nuru Hachi, the founder of the Qing dynasty. He invaded Korea. He's supposed to have taken 2 million Korean women to China. The devastation of this Japanese invasion and this Chinese invasion after that ransacked the country so badly and so deeply. In my opinion, Korea never recovered until 20th century. The destruction was so devastating. It's like it took the roots out of a tree. Korea just, it was amazing that it survived so many years. So anyway, when Korea was in the late 19th century was a very, very poor state. When Japanese were industrializing and developing, when China was declaring independence in Sun Yat-sen, Korea remained very, very backward, especially in politics. They were still fighting between, the different interpretation of Confucius. And people were killed, and their wives and children became slaves of another country. It was a terrible country, although it was my country. And during that time, there were a lot of people whose life was terrible, nearly slave-like. Just they have no place of their own, don't even have their names. They just had their slave document. These people naturally aspired to communism, a country where there is supposed to be no class. Everybody is equal. They share resources equally. They share power equally. It was very attractive to Korea. So when Korea was liberated in 1945, the American popular assessment said 76% of Korean people in North and South Korea at the time thought communism is a way to go. They were very, very pro-communist. And in 1945, about 85% of Korean people were farmers. It was an agrarian society. Industrialization you see today, Samsung, Hyundai, this is like a story from the Mars. It was that distant. So that it was a breeding ground for communist agitators. And in 2023, Joseon Communist Party, Labor Party was created in Shanghai, in China. And by the time Korea was liberated, it was saved only by the wise leadership of President Yoon, Ryu, who is remembered as the founding father of the Republic of Korea.
伊咧讲到李承晚啦，有一个叫李承晚，迄个 Republic of Korea 的迄个国父的对，国父李承晚。
You see, between 1945, let's say, till the Korean War time, or 1950s, many countries of the world were trying to become more modern than before, become industrialized, urbanized, to look more like Germany or France or America. In that competition, many people thought socialism, communism was a way to go. During the Cold War, you may remember, there was non-aligned groups of countries. It included Yugoslavia, Egypt, Indonesia, Sukarno, India, very famous leader Nehru, Sukarno with Indonesia, Gamal Abdel Nasser of Egypt, Joseph Tito of Yugoslavia. These countries were non-aligned. They say we are independent of Russia or America. We are people of our own. We have our own interests. And we have in today's world a country called group of countries called BRICS. You know about BRICS, right? It's Brazil, Russia, Iran, China, and South Africa.
South Africa.
And they're trying to change the currency of trade from dollar to yuan or some other currency. And many countries are turning to that. And both Taiwan and Republic of Korea faces this choice. We have to become quite clear about where we stand. We are Orientals. And Chinese people will say, CCP wants that slogan to be on top. We are all same race of people. We all look alike. We are all, Asians. So we have to help other Asians. So Chinese dream, the Chungkuo Mo will become realized. Chungkuo Mo.
Chinese Hmong.
Chungkuo Mo is like a restoration of all China. Beijing at the center of the world. Most countries become tributary countries. That's not the image we can follow. Although there is a lot of group of intellectual Koreans who believe the world is changing, China is rising, America is declining, that we better side with the winning side, China. They are really more in number than the other way around. But America, I think, has made some mistakes. I think they made a mistake in Iraq War, Afghanistan War, and some others.
Vietnam War.
Syrian War. But for Korea and Taiwan, I think America has been very, very good. Although they betrayed us a few times. You may know in 1950, Secretary of State of the United States was Dean Acheson. Dean Acheson drew a line. If Soviets attacked, this is how far we'll go to defend it. They drew a line between Japan and Korea. It was an invitation to Kim Il-sung to invade 4 months later, after the announcement. That kind of mistake. In 1905, there was a very famous Taft-Katsura memo. The Americans agreed with Japanese. We will mess with Korea, but Americans can mess with Philippines, will tolerate each other. Gentlemen's agreement. America has done some devious things like that, but in a fundamental way, they were really strong friends. They came to Korea, over 40,000 people were killed. And one of the interesting things about Korean War was soldiers who came to Korean War were a bit different from the soldiers you see today. In Iraq War or Afghanistan War, they were mostly Christians. They were all very much for justice and freedom. They really did a lot of great things through their missionary work and military help and others. Korea has been a reliable partner to America, but with the president's candidates today in Korea are all talking about how he can better negotiate with Trump for the better trade deals, tariff deals, and so on.
Thank you. 安尼回答你的问题。
I don't know if I answered the question.
No, this politics is very interesting. 啊，個繼續無？係。
It seems like Korea has a new president every other year, right?
Yeah.
Now, the new president elected in June, why is he going to serve 5 years or serve the term left by President Yoon?
Yes.
That's what I'm saying.
Yeah. You know.
The gentleman asked me this. In Korea, president is elected for one-term president, serving 5 years. Why is it like that, was a question. This is what happened. United States today, in 2025, has the same constitution as it was amended in year 1987. From 1948, construction of Republic of Korea 1948 to 1987, for 38-year period, there were 9 amendments to the Constitution. But in the succeeding 39 years since 1987 to today, there has been no amendment. It's been long-lasting Constitution. That Constitution was created at a time in the aftermath of what is generally thought to be military dictatorship. Following Park Chung-hee and Chun Doo-han, 1987, new Constitution was created. At that time, the popular sentiment was president shouldn't be so too powerful. President cannot just dismiss the Congress and declare martial law and do anything he wants to. There's a lot of limitation. So they reduced the term to 1 term instead of 2, and increased the year from 4 years to 5 years. So they have a system now, 1-term president serving for 5 years. But they usually become lame duck after about 1 year. And then usually after they serve their term, they usually go to jail or impeached. So it's not a really happy prospect, but that's how it came to be. You have some related question to this, right? Did I answer your question?
Start with the scratch.
Every presidential candidate, in and out, are promising a constitutional amendment. One is saying that Korea needs not major two-party system like America. We should have multi-party system. Their advocacy is whenever there's a big issue, there's a pro and con, government is paralyzed. You need a third-party presence to balance the arguments and arrive at correct decision. There's a group of people who thinks South Korea become more of a parliamentary system, more like Great Britain or Japan, so that the majority party elects the prime minister. I'm against the parliamentary system because I think that's an invitation to corruption. The President Park Chung-hee said, South Korea, Republic of Korea has three enemies. North Korea, poverty, and corruption. He succeeded in poverty, but he didn't succeed in corruption. There's still corruption. And this time, usually running in favor of the leftists. It's making our job much more difficult. Last year I went to Korea, one of the harbor city in Korea, and met a young person, young people, two people. They were born in 1984. They were age 40 last year, 2024. And I said, I live in America and I'm 83 years old, and all my friends are old and they're no fun to talk to. If you talk to me for 2 hours or so, I'll buy you the best meal you ever had. So we went to a restaurant and talked. And some of the things that these people said shocked me. One said, Korea today, we have what we have now, thanks to the achievements of these people. I thought that he was talking about President Syngman Rhee or President Park Chung-hee. They were talking about democratic fighters, leftist government. They said, if they didn't do what they did, wouldn't we still live under military dictatorship? Wouldn't that be miserable? It's their response. It shocked me for somehow. The other thing is, I asked them, why do young people today don't have children? They said, it's very difficult. Both gentlemen said they were making incomes a little higher than average. So they are pretty well off. But if I get married and have a child, for each child, I will need 2 million won every month. I can spend 2 million won for a new child, but if I spend 2 million won for that, I will have nothing else. I would be able to ride only subway. I will not be able to go out to eat, take my wife out to a movie. All of them will become zero. So no child is their answer. One guy will not even get married. So this age difference, generational the conflict is a very serious problem. I don't know. Is it like that in Taiwan?
我想伊对你的回答就是讲，伊嘛唔知就对了，因为伊嘛要哪开始的。因为伫台湾那像你也去 impeach 的，看你的剩下的几年，然后也可以继续，有时候要重新再来。我想这个问题可能无讲什么答案。另外一个，要有啊。你讲安怎？
台湾的少年的囡仔有惊生囡仔，惊结婚无会敢问。
你敢问啊？
无啦，伊问的伊敢问的啦。
好安尼 ，OK。Anybody want to answer？ 有上爱要甲讲无？啊？那个几分钟？那个15分钟嘛，吼 ，Yeah。Okay, your question is the young people in Taiwan is different from in Korea. I think the same. They don't want to have kids. They have their own. Yeah. For some reason, they think the left is better than the right one.
That's right.
Yeah. I think that's a very kind of. OK， 好了，我想最后咁是即摆几点啊？即摆几点？12点 OK， 那就最后，哎呀，要个继续问啊，迄个小张了，嘿，你看问较济detail。
Can I ask you a personal question?
Yes.
How long you live in North Korea before you escape to South Korea?
Okay. Good. I was born in North Korea
拿掉，关掉，
in 1941.
关掉，关掉，这个关掉。
When war, from about 1938 till 1945, my father was a sort of deputy manager of a local bank, Japanese bank, in the city of Hamhung, where I was born. He didn't always live there. It was not his permanent address, but his job led him there. It was a temporary place, but he lived there for 7, 8 years. When World War II came about, on August 6th, bomb was dropped in Hiroshima. 3 days later, August 9th, it fell on Nagasaki. On a day Nagasaki was bombed, Joseph Stalin's Russian army came through Manchuria. By 1st of September of 1945, Soviet Russian troops were already on the outskirts of the city of Hamhung, where I was living. And my father thought he would be marked by communists and would not survive, told my mother that I'm going to go to Seoul first and establish a little place to have you back. I'll come back for you. And he took his own mother, my grandmother, and my 2 older brothers with him and left me, who was then 6 years old, to 3-year-old sister of mine, to my mother. And by at that time, the 38th parallel, when Soviets were moving so fast, if left alone, they would occupy the entire peninsula of Korea. Americans were alarmed and made a suggestion to Russia, you come to Korea is okay, but stop at 38th parallel. And South Korea, south of 38th parallel became South Korea, north of it, North Korea. Today's boundary is a little different, as settled at the end of the Korean War. But 38th parallel. When my father went to Seoul, it was easily crossable. There was not much barrier. But as time passes, by late 1946, it became too dangerous for my father to come to home. So my mother received a letter, hand-delivered by a friend, no mail service. I was going to come and get you, but situation is different and it's scary. So you have to come on your own. So my mother was like 32 years old with very little kids and carried, and only thing that I don't need to go through how we crossed it. But what my mother told me, and what little fainting memory I have a reconstructed story about that. But however that story goes, it is my realization that our crossing 38th parallel was something close to a miracle. All probabilities were against it. We would have been caught and brought back. That did not happen, thanks to God. So after that, I retired in 2012 from university teaching and wondered what I should do for the rest of my life. What can I do that can be doing some good for the world? And my aim today, 1912, upon my retirement, I founded and began an organization called One Korea Foundation. We have about $100,000 income each year to distribute to various causes. So anybody or any group that works for liberation of North Korean people through infiltration of information into North Korea or some kind of information projects, and some projects that help the defectors from North Korea. There are 35,000 North Korean defectors living in South Korea today, except the flow has been really diminished in the latter years of Kim Jong-un system. Today, crossing the Yalu River or Tuman River is too risky for anybody to do it. So they don't stop coming. But still numbers about 35,000 people. A couple of them are now Korea's congressmen on the non-communist side. What else is related to this? Oh, my personal history. So my dream is to see Korea to be united, North Korean people to be liberated from suffering and death, and threat of death, constant death threat. And I think that's it. How I talk about anything here too. So thank you for the question. That's my question. Yeah, my field that I studied was, I went to University of Minnesota and wanted to get a doctorate in philosophy. But getting a job as a philosophy PhD was not very good. I had to make a living, and I met a very great professor, sociology professor. So I studied under him, so my degree is in sociology, but my heart is still in philosophy.
Thank you.
And Jesus, no.
Thank you, yeah. Okay. Thank you very much, yeah. Yeah, I think that's the end of his presentation, yeah. I'm going to invite him to come back, we may have different kind of subjects to talk. Yeah, he's open to talk to any subject. Yeah, he's a very knowledgeable person. He can talk to philosophy, sociology, and politics, anything you want to talk about that, yeah. And thank you again. Yeah, thank you, Jay. Yeah, this is the present from our association.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Yeah. anh ấy đang kia là từ cao gia kết束. Ở đây bài gì